As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping on to the NBA Finals court, Curt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's the bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ILPsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score that would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight, we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats, football history and its memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting Network. We're live from the Southport, North Carolina home of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America that focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150-plus years of football history and memorabilia, and you can find us on the web at Gridiron Greats Magazine. This time I'd like to introduce my co-host, the senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Largent. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
Bob, good to be here as always. You nailed the intro. Where your new the new home of Gridiron Greats. You nailed it. The Wallingford, Connecticut. Gone. You're nailing it, Bob. Well done.
It's been 36 days as a new citizen down here. Joe.
Last show you stuttered a little bit, to get it. Now you just nailed it. Well done.
we are ready, and I'm going to hand off to you looking at an auction first before we get into our meat of the show, of our discussion.
Last show, we talked about some auctions that were coming up, including Memory Lane. They don't do previews, but Memory Lane popped a couple days ago on September 20th. There's a lot of very high-end sports in there. A lot of really nice older, what's that one sport where they have the white ball, the small ball they throw at somebody with a stick? Anyways, they've got some pretty high-end which shall not be named, and it's got some incredible football, including a 1952 Bowman Large Tom Landry rookie card, rated PSA 10. This is nearly a 70-year-old card, Bowman Large, which is stunning. Number 142, which is, short print. PSA 10, just incredible. It's a Pop 2, which I didn't know, but incredible. Just incredible. And what's funny is you look at that and you're like, this thing had better be pristine, because there's a tiny bit of subjectivity to grading, wouldn't you say?
I'm looking at it right now. That's an incredible card. That is an incredible card.
Yeah. You have a rough cut edge, right? Yep. Yeah.
Question: where do you think it's going to go? How much?
Oh boy!
And how?
I'm not 8,800 right now. Next bid 9,800. This isn't my sandbox, to be honest, Bob. But I want to go back to, you said it's perfect, and I was looking at this and went, man, again, I brought up the subjectivity of grading, and I'm like, the rough cut on the right, yes, that's the way they cut them back then. They had blades that cut, and sometimes the blade, if this is down on the bottom of the sheet, and they don't take that into account, but a little bit, it's about 60, 40, 55, 45, top to bottom, center. It's not perfect. We've seen PSA 10s that are like, wow, that's just stunning. And in this one, to me, it's not quite perfect. And it just brought up that whole subjectivity to grading. If this is in a PSA 9 flip, I wouldn't blink an eye. PSA 10, that's interesting. The next lot right after it, 1950 Bowman number 5 Y.A. Tittle rookie card. It's 1950. They're smaller. They're much smaller. They're little squares. SGC 100. SGC 10, excuse me, which is their old 100 flip. And I'm looking at that one, and I'm like, that is perfectly square. The corners are sharp, etc. Perfect. I don't know. It's just a little bit of subjectivity to grading, obviously, but it's fascinating. Just if that was again at an SGC 96 or 98 holder, I wouldn't blink an eye. SGC 100, SGC 10, okay, this thing had better be perfect. It's pristine, is what it says. So I mean, I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? And I know you're not big into graded cards, so the subjectivity of grading is one of your reasons.
Well, it's amazing to look at, and it's amazing to see what people pay for these graded cards, and I just find it fascinating. I mean, it just doesn't do anything for me. You know what I mean? So, being the dinosaur that I am in the hobby, obviously it becomes I don't even know how to put it. I mean, it's just fascinating to continue to watch it and see the prices go every which way, and it's truly amazing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, real quick, touch upon 48 Leaf, and we had a lot of feedback last week about the uncut sheets we were talking about, yada yada yada, and it's an amazing sheet that you own. Could I hand off to you real quick, 3 minutes or less? Talk a little bit about it.
You can hardly talk about Leafs in 3 minutes. I've never been quantified like that. It's that. Yeah, we had a couple people inquire about that. I have. I mentioned in my my uncut sheet collection. I have a Series 1 There are 98 cards in the Leaf set, and they were printed on 2 7x7 sheets, which are 49 sheets per. So Series 1 and Series 2. Series 1 has card 1 through 49, which includes card number 1, the Sid Luckman, card number 4, the Doak Walker, and the Sammy Baugh, the Bob Waterfield. I mean, this is star-studded. And, and the layout of this is interesting because normally you think about, as you're looking at the sheet, card number 1 goes in the upper left, and then it runs, left to right horizontally. So, card number 7 would be in the upper right. Excuse me, card number 1 is upper left. But in this sheet, card number 1 is in the upper right, the Sid Luckman, and then it runs vertically. So card number 7 is in the bottom right. And then number 8 is second row from the right. It runs backwards. If you flip it over, so they printed this, as if you flip it over, so you're looking at the back, all the stats, card number 1, Sid Luckman, is in the upper left. But if you flip it over to look at it, it's in the upper right. So it's backwards from what everything is. And I'll post a picture of that up. Maybe we can share it. But it's just, we've talked a lot about 48 Leaf. I wrote an article for Gridiron several years ago about card doctors and their love of the 48 Leaf set. And, I was a high-end 48 Leaf collector, for a while. Very passionate about the set and just, I love it. It's just, it was tough to see, a set like this where cards were getting by. The measurements are all over the place. I convert it to millimeters. It's 50 millimeters by 60 millimeters. They're rectangular shaped, and just how prone to card doctoring they were. You find a large one, you trim it down. And I think last week I mentioned this is the only uncut sheet I've ever seen. And I'm looking at this Sammy Baugh, buried right in the middle of the sheet. And like, man, if there were more sheets of this, I'll take a razor blade out there and cut Sammy Baugh out. It'd be the fattest bordered slinging Sammy anyone's ever seen.
Wow. Well,
it's interesting.
All right. When we talked about, we've talked about this numerous times in the past, the doctoring of cards to make them more clean, obviously to get a higher grade, yada, yada, yada. You actually have the evidence of what you could see from a sheet and primitive trimming of cards back then, what a card doctor would actually do to that 48 Leaf set to make it, in perfect condition to get a grade 7, 8, 9, whatever. And again, I go back to something I've said numerous times over the years. When I collected the 1948 and 49 Leaf sets, I rarely saw a card that was better than VGEX condition.
Yeah.
And this is well before any type of cards were graded. And I became skeptical, and you caught on to it very early. I mean, we've been talking about this for years, that how come I never saw any of these pristine cards way back when I was collecting in the 80s? And now all of a sudden, we fast forward to, 00, the 10s, all of a sudden, out of somebody's closet, all these 48 Leafs in perfect condition are flooding the market. And it makes no sense whatsoever. And people are gullible enough to buy it like that. I mean, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And again, you have the evidence. You have the sheet.
Yeah. Absolutely. And obviously, it's a rhetorical question to say, why the hell were we only seeing VG cards, 20 years ago, and now all of a sudden, we've got PSA 8s and 9s? Well, it's because there were a lot of fat bordered cards around, and the Mosers of the world started scarfing those up and making them perfectly square, smaller PSA 8s. So, it's tough. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see such a beautiful, stunning set turned, doctored up. And now every time I see a Leaf, a very nice high-end Leaf, my first thought isn't what a stunning card. My first thought is, has that been under the knife or colored up or soaked or whatever? And odds are the answer is yes, just based on what you just said as well, which is, there weren't a lot of those back in the day. And I've heard that from many, many collectors who've been in this industry longer than I have. I mean, I'm a new guy coming into the hobby, 22 years ago. I'm new. Guys like you have been doing it since you were, a young mustachioed captain, plopping your nickel down for some 65 Philly.
It's only been a mere 57. Only been a mere 55 years I've been collecting cards, so it's not a big deal.
Longer than I've
but
been.
I want to say one thing also to try to again relate this whole situation. One of the last times before I packed my collection away, before we moved, I looked at my 48 and 49 leaf sets, and I said to myself, if I graded these overall GVG, that's the highest grade I could possibly give these cards. I have a handful of cards that I would grade X. I have mostly cards that are graded poor, fair, GVG at best, with a few, VGEXs and a handful of EXs, and that's it. As far as the high series and 48 leaves,
yes.
Don't tell me there's any PSA 8s or 9s, because they're not. I can't see how they even existed. I never saw one. I look at all my high numbers. My high numbers, again, VGEX down to 4. And that's it. I mean, it's just stupid. Ridiculous. And again, you got the proof. And I talked to one individual who very interested in the show. We talked on the site. He's a long-time subscriber to Gridiron Greats. And I said to Nick, when he actually called me and he asked me about it, and I explained to him, he's an old-time collector, long-time collector, that never did anything with sheets, but he was just fascinated by him. And he says to me, and it was a pretty interesting question, do you think these sheets got cut up and got into the hobby, and that's why we got so many high-graded cards now? And I said, it's very possible. And it's also more possible that the sheets that were actually cut were retrimmed. The individual cards were retrimmed and touched up by the doctors, and that's it. And there's nothing we can do about it. No.
Absolutely.
Nothing to do about it.
We've got the evidence from you saying, years ago these weren't around. And we've also got the evidence of seeing cards with specific markings on them that are graded a PSA 6 suddenly reappear in a PSA 8 holder. Just lots of evidence, just lots of, trimmed up cards that get graded. It's tough. It's a blemish on the hobby. I like third-party graders. I like PSA. It's a numbers game. I mean, if they're grading, 50 million cards a year, I mean, they're not an airline. It's not perfect. I mean, at some point, some of them are going to slip by the goalie. Some of them are going to slip by the goalie. And unfortunately, we're looking at the 1,000 cards a year that slip by the goalie and going, dang it, how did that get by? Not the other 49 million. Yeah, it's tough. Nothing's perfect. So.
Yeah. Not to change the subject, but I want to touch real quick on, before our guest comes on. We talked last week also about the unopened packs that we've been hoarding and trying to pay off future debt by selling it. I am succumbing to the fact that these packs that I'm staring at right now, I have now two 2021 Prestige 30 card packs that I paid $8 a piece plus sales tax for. And I have 4 Score 2021 40 card packs, which the local store here that has them really hasn't sold any since the last week I was into the store. And I asked the lady at the checkout counter, are you selling a lot of these? And she said, honestly, you're like, I remember you from the last time buying a pack. You're buying another pack now. That's about the only people buying it. So I said maybe I should just fill my carriage here with 2021 Score packs and box them away. Or I could wait. Maybe they're going to mark them down to half price or something, and I can hoard them then. That'll be like the good old days when I used to buy packs for 20 cents in clearance and stuff like that. But I think there's a little production issue this year, and I think things are a little different than in the past. So, or there's no flippers in North Carolina. That's my other my other thought. So,
Yeah.
all right.
No.
Our special guest this year, I'd like to introduce him and get on with our questioning of him. Our special guest tonight is the historian and curator at the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame. He's been working at the Hall of Fame since 2018. Past museums that he's been associated with include the Carver County Historical Society in Wacona, Minnesota, the H.H. Bennett Studio in Wisconsin Dells, and also the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. He is a 2015 and 2017 graduate from the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire. He has a great passion for history, especially as it relates to football. I'd like to welcome to the show this evening Mr. Jeremy Swick. Jeremy, welcome to the show. And before we get started, I just want everyone to know we are not related in any way, shape, or form, as far as I can tell. And I find it amazing.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
I find it amazing that another person by the name of Swick has the DNA of football in him.
Yeah. What are the odds?
What are the odds?
The DNA of football. Brenda was shocked when I showed her the name, and she said, "There's no way we're on Ancestry.com." So we tried looking you up, and I know you're not like my sixth distance cousin, twice removed or whatever. And just a quick background on our name. My real name, the phonetic or the actual spelling of it from Eastern Europe was Swiech. My grandfather came over here right after World War I as an immigrant, obviously, and the company that he went to work for in New Haven, Connecticut, changed his name because it was easier to spell to Swick, and it took it. And but that's not actually my real name. That's always been Swiech. I've thought many times in the past to switch to the original name, but that's gone by the wayside. So I wanted to clarify that before we get started. And I'm honored to have another Swick on the show. And I'm going to lead off by asking you, Jeremy, how'd you become a fan of football?
Yes, well, first I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it. When my family came over, they actually changed the name from ZWICK to SWICK.
Okay.
So, that's definitely one of those things I think people on, coming from that area in the world, definitely it was changed pretty often, more than I think a lot of people realize.
Yes, definitely.
So now, getting into how I became a fan of football. Well, you see, I'm originally from, let me rephrase, I've lived almost my whole life in Wisconsin. So that becomes really part of, I think, your cultural identity, if you will, being a Packers fan, just growing up in the shadows of what is Green Bay Packer football. And so,
I can
playing,
see that,
go ahead.
No, I said I can see that very well. I mean, if you're in Wisconsin, you're from Wisconsin, you're definitely 99.9% sure you're going to be a Packers fan. So I can see that.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that I have to laugh because I don't really remember when I became a fan. I always just remember being a fan. And so that was, one of those really fun, just places to grow up, Milwaukee area. But I still like yesterday. I can remember my first game going to Lambeau and just, the excitement I felt. I'll fly back for Thanksgiving, and we're going to go to that game that Sunday. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. That sounds great.
Nice. That's exciting. I'm curious. Obviously, you work for the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame right now in Atlanta, Georgia. Correct. How long have you been there?
Yes, sir. So I've been there since 2018, moving obviously from Minnesota, working at a different museum up there. And, it's just been great to have that wide range of different experiences throughout my time here, just not only just at the Hall of Fame, but living down south, living in Atlanta, just having, that experience as well has been excellent.
Yeah. I didn't realize it had moved to Atlanta to that, doing some research for the show. Once in a lifetime opportunity, working, at the College Football Hall in the Hall of Fame. It's really cool. I mean, what's that like? I mean, what's your role there? What's it like? What's your day-to-day activities just being around all that greatness?
I have to laugh when you say once in a life, because that's how I thought when I was working at the Pro Football Hall of Fame as an intern back in 2016. I thought this would be the one and only time I get that close to greatness, if you will. I was fortunate enough to actually do Brett Favre's induction at the Hall of Fame. And so being a kid from Wisconsin, I don't think – it's funny because I'm fortunate enough to meet athletes and players and coaches all the time now. And I'm like, oh, you're not Brett Favre. It's okay. Nice to meet you. Take care. But I do have to laugh because something about me, growing up in the 90s, I got the opportunity to meet Dorsey Levens, one of the great running backs of that kind of Packers era in the 90s. And I felt like a little kid again, which is funny because, meeting some of the other athletes that maybe have more notable, more, well-known to the general public. But I felt like a little kid again, shaking hands with Dorsey Levens and all that. But to answer your question, my day-to-day is very interesting. It's a little bit different every day, to be honest. I'm a historian and curator, but I also do a lot of archival work. So sometimes, it's taking images of historic jerseys or going through our, expansive media guides and programs and all of that.
Sure. It's got to be cool. Sorry.
Off script. I'm curious. I'm curious to find out, Jeremy. What is the library at the College Football Hall of Fame like? Can you describe it as far as the amount of it, publications, so on and so forth, the mix of books and/or publications, programs? Fill us in on that.
Yes. So I would argue, I think the last check, 7, 8, maybe 8,000 or so programs. But it's interesting. We're actually due to get 7,000 additional programs from Sports Illustrated as they're downsizing. And so what we have done is we kind of gone through and did an inventory of items, that we had lots of duplicates of and, found different homes for those. And we'll kind of do the same thing now that we have a list with the Sports Illustrated the Sports Illustrated programs and media guides are donating to see what we already have and what we don't have and kind of make that surfing through all that information a little easier. With books, we have books dating back to the early 1890s, 1880s of the start of the game with the rule books. And that's one of my favorite areas to kind of look through at the Hall is the old rule books. Because when we get new donations, if the donor might have a general year, something they think this helmet was, 1902, 1903, sometimes I can go back in the Spalding Guide and actually look up that advertisement because there's only so many out there. And sure enough, a lot of times I'll find a diagram of the exact helmet I am holding, 110, 120 years later.
Wow. That is incredible. And now, I'd like to know, Jeremy, media guides. What's the oldest media guide you have? And again, can you give a ballpark as far as how many media guides you in the collection there?
So the oldest media guide, I don't think it's the oldest, but it's really jumping out in my head. We have some from the mid-1930s from Notre Dame, and I just remember them. I just remember them because they're kind of hardbound and they're almost like a book more than what you would consider a media guide today. Our oldest program is, I think we have an 1873 and 1874 programs. So those predate quite a bit from the media guides. But my favorite thing about those early programs is when you open them up, you actually look at the player's name. It's funny because it's usually like, the class of 75, but they're talking 1875. And then what they were studying in school. So they were, instead of by position, in school of law, school of medicine, school of education, instead of, almost I'd say maybe more true student athletes at that point because, the game's changed quite a bit from those early days.
Definitely. Wow. That's amazing. Truly amazing. Joe, I cut you off.
Oh, no worries, Bob. No worries. You get somebody like this on, and it's just fun. So I was going over the Hall of Fame players by school inductees list. I just wanted to rattle off a couple here, just if you'll indulge me. Top of the heap: Notre Dame with 46, USC 43, Michigan 31, Ohio State 26. You just have all your usuals. When you scroll down to like Illinois greats, Red Grange, obviously inducted in 1951. And then I go down to the bottom, Georgia Southern. And what I was specifically looking for is, I'm from Oregon. I was looking for U of O Ducks, how many they had inducted. Do you know the answer to that? 0.
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Yeah, it was 0, which kind of surprised me, but oh well. So you've got to have some interesting stories about people coming in. I mean, just what they're looking for specifically, and just how popular that Red Grange display must be, in the Illinois section.
Definitely. And so as we moved from South Bend, Indiana to Atlanta, Georgia, one of the really exciting things about the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame now is how interactive it is, with several different interactive exhibits. But one of my favorite parts on the second floor is definitely that Red Grange jersey. We've had it beautifully restored. And it's interesting because it sits right next to Jay Berwanger's helmet from his playing days. And, you can see the early, the kind of the more early creation of like a nose covering after he had, broken his nose. But it's always interesting. And what's one of the interesting aspects is the fact that so much of what we have, unfortunately, just doesn't always have permanent rotation on display. And so it's one of those really exciting things about the way the Hall of Fame is set up. I can continually bring out, different items that we've collected over the years or recent additions. And so that's one of those really fun aspects about the Hall of Fame, just the versatility.
Do you do that? Are you arranging the displays? I mean, is that your responsibility? So,
Correct. So most of our permanent displays I've arranged. We have our biggest one every year is we have a temporary exhibit kind of space. And so currently I have lockers of all 32 inductees from 2020 and 2021. And so that meant reaching out to 32 different institutions and 32 different players and their families to acquire various artifacts and memorabilia to either get as a donation or get on loan or, something in between. But it's definitely one of those really fun areas of seeing something. A lot of times it's me scratching on, a piece of printer paper, what I'm kind of envisioning, and then to see it months later kind of come to fruition is always one of those really exciting parts about my position.
Boy, I would love to see that. Great. I guess I'll have to make it down there. I would absolutely love to see a in color, in person Red Grange, Illinois jersey, because just you have to use your imagination when you see some of these black and white photos. And it was just, there's always been curiosity about what the actual photo is. And I bought a replica jersey from Ebbets Field like 2 years ago, and I love it. But in the back of my mind, I've always been like, I wonder if this is what it looked like.
Yes. It's one of those things that when you have, and one thing I really love about the Hall is it's definitely accessible for the wide variety of, audiences, that your hardcore fan is definitely going to get something out of it. People, that have come and joined a vintage cards team are going to be really excited when they walk on the second floor and look to their left and see the 1955 Topps All-American set signed by 79 of the 88 possible.
Wow. Wow.
And
wow.
that I was listening to you guys a little earlier, and it's one of those things that I agree with, where all these cards come out of nowhere, these pristine cards, and there's definitely issues in what we do with the trimming and the doctoring. But every once in a while, I get this guy who had reached out to me via email. Well, let me rephrase that. Someone in his inner circle had reached out because he didn't use email. He didn't have a cell phone. He had his rotary phone, was living in the Bronx, and asked if I would be interested in, these nice cards he had. And I didn't really know what that meant. And so talking to him throughout a pandemic, because once I realized what he had, my fear, to be honest, was that he was going to, put them on the market and they would be gone very quickly. But he ended up, deciding that it was best to donate them. And so I tell everyone when I get a new donation that I can't guarantee I will put it on permanent display, because obviously everyone would love all their stuff on display all the time.
Yeah.
But with those 55 All-America cards, he was the first guy I've ever said, yep, I'm going to find room. I don't know where the room is yet, but we will find room for all 100 cards.
Wow. Wow.
He outdid himself shortly after that, and also donated he had donated the 1948-52 exhibit cards. Almost all of them signed.
Wow.
49 of the 53 were signed.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Love that.
Unbelievable.
To
Jeremy,
be a card guy myself. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you actually collect any football items?
Yes, I do. I'm at my house right now looking around. One of my good friends, Dakota, we worked at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. She called me a collector's collector. So I have a very large amount of Packers memorabilia, vintage football cards, primarily working on the exhibit set, just finished the 51 Bowman.
Oh, wow.
I just bought 2 Kenny Washington cards today. The 48 Bowman and the 49 Leaf.
Wow.
Nice cards.
48 Bowman.
Nice.
All vintage. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing. I mean, to go into it more, I do collect a lot of NBA cards, more modern era. I'm a huge Favre rookie collector, which I think goes without, not a huge shock there. I got into, I don't have a ton of baseball cards, but I did get into the Project 2020 last year and did a complete set of the Clemente art cards they had and a complete set of the Robinson cards. But now that's scratching the itch to go pick up those rookies at some point. But I think I'm going to have to jump a couple more tax brackets before that's a realistic goal.
I gotta put you on the spot. Who do you like better, Favre or Rodgers?
Brett Favre. That being said, would I say position-wise, skill-wise, Rodgers, just statistically, throws way less interceptions, doesn't throw into triple coverage unless you're counting, 2 weeks ago. But in general, I think he's definitely more of a sound quarterback. But there was something special about, Favre throwing chop blocks at Warren Sapp or, throwing off his back foot in triple coverage and scoring a touchdown and then shrugging at Holmgren after after it worked.
Yep.
So I'll always, I think, be a Favre fan. I wouldn't say over Rodgers, but when I get asked that question, it's as you can tell, it's a pretty easy answer for me.
I heard you.
Not the pigeonhole, but you graduated in 2015, so I just kind of assumed you were you're a younger guy, but I mean you're obviously collecting all this vintage, and I assumed you're really into vintage just because you're surrounded by it every day.
Definitely. So I was born in 91. I'm 29. The cat's out of the bag. The historian and curator is pretty young at the Hall of Fame.
Whoa!
So I had to laugh when you guys were, talking about how long you've been collecting. I'm like, I don't know if I was alive when you guys started, but the vintage, I think, has always been of interest to me.
I feel old on it. Holy mackerel. Yeesh. I'm definitely the dinosaur in the room.
Nonsense. Young at heart, right?
Yeah, nice. Well done. Well, it's just good to see people into vintage, because it's just it took me a while to come around to it. So it's kind of cool. But like I said, you're surrounded by it at the Hall of Fame. I mean, at some point you gotta be curious. I mean, yeah. Anyways, well, congrats, man. I like it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Definitely. It's one of those things. Like that's one of the really exciting things about having those 55 cards on display. And it's one of the interesting things that I think, and I'm not Nostradamus, but one of the things I think these vintage cards are slowly moving into are almost more like art pieces than they are the actual cards. And I realized that watching people look and interact with those 55 cards, because we have a nice little story of like what they are, and 90 of the 100 cards are our Hall of Famers. And so having people look at that, but I think a lot of people just appreciate the aesthetic of them, because I know for a fact they don't know all the names. They don't know really who was where and how good they were, except kind of, some of the more marquee names. But I can just see people start to have that different level of appreciation, maybe without knowing who the players are, and to the same level that you or any of us might. And so I think that's one of the really exciting things about vintage cards in general. It also scares me a little bit because I think the price might go up a little bit. So I've realized when I see it is the best time to buy it. And so I've started to live by that motto a little bit, maybe to my own detriment sometimes.
That's okay.
I like it.
Well, I kind of skipped. I apologize, Bob. I got ahead and asked him about the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. So if you want to hit him about the area, I was actually curious if he had a favorite area. So why don't you grab? well, I'll chime in there, Jeremy. The next question up is, and I was curious about this too. The entire college Hall of Fame. I mean, do you have a favorite display? Do you have a favorite area? Do you have something you walk by and still stop and look at?
Yes, I do. And I'm a little biased because I created it, but it was it's one of our more recent. I just have to thank the Southern Company for providing the funding for it, but it's our Celebrating HBCUs, which are historically black colleges and universities. And it's an opportunity for those who don't know much about them to really take that deep dive in learning more about the rich histories and more than just football, learning about the bands, the classics, and seeing all that memorabilia on display. We increased it by maybe 5 times. It's almost 500 square feet now. So it's really prominent in our museum. That's one of the areas I really love. If we're talking full exhibit, that's probably my favorite. I also love the fact that we have the 1999 Paul Bunyan's axe. Being from Wisconsin, having one of the actual axes here is one of those really just fun things. You can see on the sides of it where they tried to keep adding to it and eventually just donated it to us, obviously, before I got there. But those are probably two of my more favorite exhibits, as well as I guess the rotunda where all the names are etched in on the blades for each Hall of Fame class. That's just one of those really kind of special areas at the Hall of Fame. Really, where it celebrates rather than having bust on display or the old reliefs at South Bend if you had been there. This is all digital, but it still does a really good job of sharing their story, a quick video, some images, and, of course, the information on those Hall of Famers.
Wow. That's got to be pretty cool. Because people come there, they travel out of the way to go there, and everybody's probably got one or two things that they're really excited about. Like I mentioned, I'd find my way up to the Illinois section and just stand there in front of Red Grange's display. If it's still on. And I imagine just even working there, every once you have to stop and appreciate that you that you're surrounded by it, by greatness. It's pretty cool.
Definitely. It's one of those amazing reminders, just how lucky I am for what I do, and just kind of celebrating the rich, passions and pageantry and traditions of college football. One of the learning curves for me, to be honest, was being from, the Midwest and the North, was how serious they take college football down here. I'd say it's a little different than up in the North, and I always, I get asked, Alabama or Auburn, and I just say go Troy, because I learned that's the way to get me out of that situation. They're like, oh, he's neutral. We'll leave him alone. And throwing in that go dogs to just about anyone, kind of creates a goodwill towards me, which is always nice.
Yeah, no kidding. The Minnesota section, I met Bronco Nagurski's up there. What's his display look like? Or what's that display?
So it's interesting. We don't have a whole lot on Nagurski really on display. We just don't have a whole lot of memorabilia from his time playing. But recently, what we do is a sponsorship with Sport Turf. They lay our field down we have a 45-yard field with a field goal indoors right at the center of our, museum. And so it's always fun because we're doing it 16 weeks, kind of for each week of the football season. And most recently, I talked about Bronco Nagurski. And so it's always fun, especially with things like that, because I basically picked 16 of my favorite guys throughout time and just kind of went with it because for, a minute voiceover, I can talk about just about anyone. But if it's, someone I'm really excited about, that's always fun. I have to think of a guy named Ricky Bell who, played at Southern Cal.
Yeah.
He, passed away pretty early. We didn't have anything on him. I get this email out of the blue from a Japanese email, and I almost deleted it instantly because it looked like spam. But I decided, I saw Ricky Bell, which is, kind of out of the blue. So I was like, all right, let's see, because it's not like, it wasn't your typical spam email, if you will. This guy covered American football back in the 70s in Japan. And he was basically Ricky Bell's right-hand man while he was there for the Japan Bowl, drove him around, had him stay with his family. And as a thank you, he gave him his Japan Bowl jersey. It signed on the back, a bunch of programs and different memorabilia from his time there. And this guy was like, I would love to have this, at an American college football museum. And, I was like, oh, this sounds great. If it comes, 5 days later, I get a package from Japan, survive the voyage over, and it's Ricky Bell's Japan Bowl jersey and signed by him, and just something really special like that, where it's one of those things every day is a little different.
So it looks like
Jeremy, I got a quick question. How many square feet is the actual College Football Hall of Fame?
Oh, that is a great question. My brain wants to go 94,000 square feet.
Wow, that's incredible. I was going to say, it's got to be huge. I mean, to hold all that stuff, it's got to be amazingly big.
I just had to pull it up. It's 94,256 square feet. So I was, off by a couple hundred, but we were close.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good call. Wow. I saw it on Wikipedia earlier, when I was looking. You have an about, and you have the gallery. That's really cool. I'm kind of cruising through that right now. Just it looks like 1951 is the inaugural class. Just how cool! What a great interactive website you have too. Just images of everybody. Click on it, and it dives down into their information, and it's just very cool. Oh, Don Hudson, I like it. It's so fun to see. How few people shine in college, or the people who shine in college who sometimes don't make it on to pro, and then the people who have lackluster careers in college who move on to shine and pro. I mean, Tom Brady would be your modern equivalent of that. He was average in college.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that are interesting because people ask, okay, so why isn't such and such in the Hall of Fame? sometimes it's an active player like Tom Brady who knows how long that man will play. But it's also interesting because then I tell people to kind of go look back and you look at some of their college careers. Maybe they were good, but they weren't, maybe the most excellent, as you mentioned with Brady and guys even like Rodgers going from a junior college in Butte to Cal, then to what he's done here at the Hall of Fame, with the Packers. And so it's one of those really interesting things because I don't think people understand how hard it is to achieve and be inducted into our Hall of Fame, because we not only cover Division I, it's Division I, FCS, 1AA, D2, D3, and NAIA. And so I really tip my hat off to some of those, smaller division school guys because, they're right up there with, some of the greats, and it's always just really fun to see, that level being shown as well and celebrated. Being from a small Division III school, I always like to, give a little extra love to some of those smaller schools.
Yeah, and here's that example working backwards. Vince Young, Texas quarterback. Here he is in the 2019. Amazing college player, the greatest Rose Bowls ever against USC. That came down to a nail biter. Obviously didn't do very good at the Raiders. So, I mean, it goes the other way like that. That's pretty interesting. So you're a collector. You've got a job at one of the coolest places I could think of working. What advice do you have for collectors of memorial, football memorabilia, et cetera?
The biggest thing I tell people, I have I have friends that are new friends and old friends that are now jumping back into cards, and they know I've been collecting. I'm basically that kid who never grew up. I just kept collecting forever. I have, several hundred bobbleheads. I just and it was funny because I was that kid who would let my sister open up her bobblehead so I could look at it. She'd play with it, whatever. I didn't even need to open it out of the box because I knew what it was, kind of put it wherever my collection was. But one of the things I always tell people is collect what you like, because let's say it goes to zero. For example, you look at the junk wax era. Obviously, a lot of those cards are making comebacks, but there's also people, myself included, that have 10,000 or so cards, and maybe not the highest value, but it's just that fun of collecting. And I think that's one thing I always tell new collectors of whatever you're looking at is, do and collect what you enjoy and have fun with it.
Very good advice. Very good advice.
Yeah.
Jeremy,
don't collect vintage, because I want the prices to stay a little reasonable for a couple more years.
I got two quick observations. Number one, you said football's, college football down here is big. I was shocked looking at TV, the cable network down here. They have an ACC network that basically shows football around the clock, morning, noon, and night. They have videos of current games. They have videos of older games. They have talk shows, yada, yada, yada. I mean, they talk at 24/7. It's amazing to watch.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible.
And number two, I can't believe how big high school football is down here, where on Friday nights there's two local stations here in Southport, Willimantic area that show the high school game of the week. And it's amazing to watch, and they're good games. They're competitive games. These high schools have really good teams here. So I think that's a good feeding ground for the colleges down south here in the Carolinas, Virginia, Georgia, and Florida, so on and so forth, Alabama especially. It's an amazing difference than back in Connecticut.
It's so interesting. So at the Hall of Fame, one more thing, we have 775 schools on display, each with their own helmet that lights up. When you walk in, you sign up, and you basically get to pick your school from Division I to NAIA. And people from smaller schools are all excited to see their helmet light up in the sea of the bigger names or more well-known schools. But what made me think of that is at the Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta, they actually have kind of the same thing. It doesn't light up, but they have all the high school teams' helmets on display there.
Oh, wow.
From all their different divisions in high school ball down here.
That's cool. That's really cool. That's amazing. Well, we're neighbors. Jeremy and I are neighbors, and I gotta shoot down to Atlanta. I don't know how far it is from here. I don't think it's that far. And I'm gonna expect a personal tour by you, unfortunately, to show me the college football.
It'll be that VIP tour for sure.
Is that
I know
something
you can't
could
do the whole
make happen?
90,000. So I can't. I know you can't do the whole place, but I would be very interested, and we'll hook up on the side. We'll figure out some dates. So I got to get down there. It's amazing, and I'm glad it's down here because it's closer than. Where was it before? It was in Notre Dame, right?
Yep, right next to Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana, and before that, Kings Island, Ohio.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was trying to think before the show, and I said, yeah, I have to be there. So. Have to have been there. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for being on. I truly appreciate your insight on the College Football Hall of Fame. You got a perfect job. Enjoy every day you go there. I know you do. And what an education you're getting, and what an education you gave our audience tonight about the Hall of Fame. That was great. I truly appreciate that.
I really appreciate both of you.
Wow.
My namesake, Jeremy Swick, historian and curator at the Chick-fil-A College Football Hall of Fame in nearby Atlanta, Georgia. And what a incredible story, and what an incredible job. And just to wait, let me back up a bit. I'm losing my spot here on the script. Sorry about that. Hey, are you subscribed to Gridiron Greats Magazine? If not, what are you waiting for? Check out our website, GridironGreatsMagazine.com. We're getting into our 2-minute warning, and Joe, I'm going to hand off to you. What'd you pick up on tonight's show?
Oh, man, I'm so jealous. I try not to be jealous, but I'm so jealous. I spent quite a bit of time looking up looking at the Hall of Fame beforehand. We didn't even get a chance talking about being, in the Canton Hall of Fame or any of the other stuff. We focused on College Hall of Fame. It's just incredible. So, I mean, I think you and I both got a little distracted in our script because, like, at one point I was just looking at the interactive thing with all the inductees, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is cool. And the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm up. So I apologize. I lost all there.
No problem. It's interesting because yesterday I went onto their website and I was looking through everything, and I'm like, holy mackerel! I mean, you got literally the history of college football online that you could spend a week on this and not even see everything type of thing. So I can only imagine what it's like in person to go to. And I remember the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I haven't been there in years, but that I was pretty awestruck going into. I can only imagine College Football Hall of Fame. And again, I don't think really. I think many. Let me rephrase this. I think many collectors understand the history of college football and how deep it is, and how passionate the fans are for college football and their teams. And it's not a general college. I don't hear many people. Well, I'm a college football fan. They're an individual fan. They're a fan of Penn State. They're a fan of UNC. They're a fan of Virginia. They're a fan of whatever college it may be, Alabama, Auburn, so on and so forth. And they live with their team. And I think that's one of the coolest things about college football. Anytime, and I know, Joe, you go to Oregon games over there, the pageantry, the tradition, it's just there. It's something that is different than the professional game. You know what I mean? It's something completely different to see and to view and to experience. And again, I was brought up on Yale football. Yale football is a shell of what it used to be. I watched a lot of UConn football back in the 70s. UConn football is the laughing stock in the country right now. The bottom Division I team. I don't know why they have a team for. You know what I mean? But they're still passionate UConn football fans who've been going to games for 20, 25 years. And they'll continue to go. You know what I mean? Even though they lose all the time. So it's a different game. It's a different way of football. And it to me, it's not appreciated enough, with the exception of the specific fans, the hardcore fans who do collect. They collect the run of their programs, the ticket stubs, anything they can get their hands on for their particular team. And I think that's the great part about college football. All right. We're almost out of time. Joe, final thoughts.
Amazing guest, Bob. I don't know where you know Jeremy from, but outstanding guest. Again, one of those guests I think we could have just sat there and talked to for hours.
He's another one of our guests who we could have a 2-hour show with ease, and we still wouldn't finish everything.
Exactly.
It's just amazing. And again, it's the beauty of our podcast. The one thing I've said for years now, especially with the magazine, I get to see some incredible collections, and I also get to talk to some amazing people in the hobby. And in this case, the College Football Hall of Fame. This is an incredible story. It's really an incredible story. Yep. It's been an amazing trip for me since my first PAX in '65. All right, well, almost out of time. Thanks for listening. Joe, you're on vacation next week. We're going to have a special guest co-host coming next Thursday. We got a very interesting guest coming up next Thursday. So please check us out. Joe, have a great vacation, and we'll be talking 2 weeks from now. GridironGreatsMagazine.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.